Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another photo mishmash. This one being broadcast live September 9th, 2020. We got some hot new rumors to talk about. We've got the Canon. People are calling it the R5s, a 90 megapixel camera just down the road, soon to be announced. I don't know how close it is really, but we also got a full frame Sony that is going to be announced very soon, according to the rumor mill. It's going to be a new, more budget-minded version. I've got some thoughts about that, and we've got a lot more to talk about, including I want Steve's opinion on how wide is too wide. The Sony 12-24 f2.8 is sitting here on my desk. This lens is about $3,000. Is it the perfect lens for real estate, or is it too wide? And also, we put it up against something like the Sigma 14-24. So we'll talk about that, plus so much more. And very exciting to have a new guest on today, filling in for David Carr. We've got Tonya Wilhelm. Tonya, welcome to the show.
Hi. Are you able to hear me? Okay.
We are. Yep. Thanks. You know, it's just great. We've had Crystal on the last couple of weeks filling in, and I just love to have a little bit more other people besides just me, David, and Steve on from time to time. And David Carr had, I don't know, some pitiful excuse, like one of his two only children having a birthday or something like that. So thank you so much for coming on and filling in.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. I'm going to try and like play it cool and not fangirl over being on a show with you and Steve. So,
well, okay, we'll make it pretty easy because we're just both silly goofballs. You can, of course, follow Tonya at TonyaWilhelm.artist. We're going to come back and talk to you a bit more about Tonya. You have some pretty diverse work, from fantastic macro to some excellent portraiture and fine art. And so we're going to be taking a look at all of that, figuring out how you kind of diversify yourself and what you find most fulfilling, and talk a little bit about photography goals, which you recently really opened up about. So I'm excited to chat with you. And as you said, Steve is on the show as well. Steve, welcome back to the show. It feels like it's been forever.
It has been forever. I've gone all Grizzly Adams on you guys here.
Yeah, you've gone totally gray. Last time I saw you, you looked like a 20-something surfers dude. Now you just look like some old grumpy dad. Actually, not grumpy, just old smiley dad.
It's like reflective of the way the last couple of weeks had gone for me. Nothing totally urgent or earth-shattering. I've just been so swamped for some reason. I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, calls started flying in for real estate shoots. And, you know, something that your listeners need to realize if you want to get into real estate photography is that nothing is done with planning ahead. Everything is last minute. Like, I need the photos shot tomorrow and I need them edited and on my desk by the end of the day so I can load it to MLS tomorrow. Mm-hmm. That's just kind of the life. And I was dealing with that a lot in Santa Barbara when I had a lot of clients. But I've just been really slow this year for obvious reasons. But for whatever reason, the past couple of weeks have just been on fire. So yeah, sorry to miss you guys the past couple of weeks. It's good to be back. Great to have you here, Tonya. This is awesome. We kind of talked about this for a while.
Yeah, that's nice.
I have actually shot some real estate, and I feel like it's always that way. I get a call. It's like, can we do it tomorrow? And then I get jobs for a couple of weeks, and then there's nothing. It's like a strange thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you almost have to go into educational mode because, you know, they think that just because you got the shots, they're ready to be, you know, uploaded to MLS. You're like, no, this is just, I'm at the grocery store here. I got to go home and make a meal.
Yeah. Slightly related to that, I did portrait shoots for neighbors and family friends over the last week. And one just reminded just how much I love the 85 focal length. I mean, for portraits, it's just so lovely. But then I was editing the pictures, and I did both of these shoots for free. They're good friends of ours, and I was happy to do it. But then I was spending time editing the picture, and Chris is like, "You're spending too much time editing these free pictures." I'm like, I'm not going to give crappy pictures. They take some editing, especially portraits, especially of a family when you got blinkers, you know? Yeah. So
I know.
So yeah. All right, let's touch base. first, Steve, you can follow Steve at Scurich on Instagram. And just a reminder, the show notes are linked down below this video, along with links to all of my guests and co-hosts' social media. So if you would like to figure out more of what they're up to and what they got going on, you can find those links right down below this video. And Tonya, I'll put a plug up front. You are hosting a portraiture workshop soon. Is that correct? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm actually volunteering. The PPA offers fall workshops, and you get teaching credits if you teach them. And so I applied to teach one of those, and they accepted me. So that's exciting. I'm doing that on the 19th.
That's great.
I'm going to go over camera basics and then tons of composition, because I feel like you can apply that to anything, even if you don't have a good camera. So I like to cover that.
Yeah, nice. That's true. I'm just curious a little bit. How did they validate that you know what you're talking about and you're not just going to be like, hey, take a picture of my foot. It's really artsy.
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, the application had me link my different social medias, my website. So I would assume they looked at that, but
that's great.
I don't know.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
They stalked me.
Yeah, nice. Good. That's great. So again, Roy has nicely put into chat all of that information to be able to follow you. And again, if you're watching this after the fact, not looking at the chat, it's linked right down below. And Roy, thank you so much for hanging out in the chat room today and collecting questions as we go. You can follow Roy at Clicked Photos. And as he's reminding me to remind you all that if you're watching this and you're not a PEN member, you should seriously consider joining PEN. It is a fantastic resource. It was founded by several professional photographers, myself being one, old grandpa looking Steve there being another one. And we're really proud of the content we offer, but more importantly, and many of them are in the chat right now, the community. You are a fantastic group of people. One of the things that I think sets PEN apart from so many other kind of photography communities is that our online discussions and interactions with each other are the same as if you were face-to-face, which is so refreshing. It's so easy in this day and age to tell somebody that they're a butthead and that their camera choice is the wrong one and the pictures suck because you never see them in person. And I don't know, that's not a good excuse for acting that way in any way, but it just seems to be the norm for so much of online interaction. And at PEN, it's not like that. I don't really think we can take credit for that. We just happen to have a really good community of awesome people. So if you want to become a better photographer, no matter what level you're at, you should consider joining PEN. Photorec.tv/PEN is the easiest, shortcuttest way to access all of that. Yeah.
Shortcuttest?
What's that?
The shortcuttest way?
Shortcuttest. That's right. You know, making those shortcut words longer, because that's what I do. All right. A couple of quick things to touch base on that have gone out. One is PEN related. The monthly image review was just wrapped up. David McKay sat down with Jeff Dachowski. Speaking of PPA, he's a longtime high-level PPA member. He has judged both, local and national contests. And so to have his opinion in there, along with David as well, judging your images is just a fantastic way to get feedback as PEN members. There are multiple ways that you all get feedback. And you can win prizes as part of that monthly image review as well. So that's fantastic. That was out. Some really, really nice images. And I've seen some of our PEN members, what they're posting that they've captured over this last couple of weeks. I'm really excited for the contests coming up ahead as they submit some of these really nice pieces of work.
Yeah, that's awesome. And also for the viewers watching this that haven't seen Jeff before until this video, he's slated to be the president of PPA in the next couple of years. I think he's the treasurer this year, so he's got 2 more positions to go through. But you know, it's basically like this sort of chain of command that unless you really screw up and get ousted, that's kind of the way it goes. So he should be the president in the next couple of years. And Jeff has been involved with PPA for many, many years. He knows the organization in and out. And when it comes to photo competitions, he is an expert, no question about it. So check that video out if you haven't seen it already. It's really an honor to get some time with Jeff. He's one of my mentors, and he's a great dude.
Yeah, it is. And Roy is also reminding us that, Steve, you've had a series of real estate videos going out over this last week. I think that this week's is coming out tomorrow or later today.
Okay.
We're up to number 4. Those have been incredibly well received and well watched. Really appreciate you doing those. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, I'm glad to hear it. I've said this before. They've been a long time coming, and we finally, when David and Allie were out visiting a couple months ago, we had a chance to we just did a long filming of me just doing a shoot at my house, and then David's been splitting it up, kind of editing it down into these smaller segments, which I think is really great for people. And that will eventually dovetail into a lot of the editing stuff that's already on the membership site. So if you haven't checked all that out, get kind of familiar with that real estate section. But I'm just glad that people are liking it and finding some value in it. So thank you.
Yeah. And Dave McKay is on. Hi, Dave. How you doing? Steve, let me just ask you, because otherwise I'm going to forget. This Sony 12-24 f2.8 has landed on my desk for review. How wide is too wide for something like real estate photography? 12?
I mean, 12 can work. The nice thing about something with a 12 is you could be in a small room, and if you position your camera right, you can take a nice wide angle shot, and then you'll still have some room to work with transforming the angles. That's the whole issue with a super, super wide lens with a straight room, is that everything gets distorted. So if you have room to transform those angles without cropping away things that you want in the shot, that can be a good thing. So it would be a great lens. But the other 2 things you have to remember with a lens that wide: number 1, get it as level as possible when you take the shot. So you want the tripod. I talk about this in the real estate tutorial. You want that kind of ceiling to floor ratio to match. And you want the camera to be as level as possible. So that might involve a lot of tripod adjustments. And the other thing is, probably don't want to have more than 2 walls appear in the photograph after cropping and stuff, because when you put that 3rd wall in there, all of a sudden everything gets really wonky, and the ceiling looks like it shoots straight up in the air, floor's coming down at you. So if you're shooting really wide, just focus on 2 walls, and then I kind of talk about that in terms of leading lines and where to position yourself and stuff like that in the tutorials.
Nice, right? Because it's a lot more than just going into a room with a wide angle and capturing the whole room.
Oh yeah. I mean, you don't want to show somebody a picture that is angled down, looking up, just totally distorted. It's not a realistic view. It's not what our eyes see when we walk into a room.
Yeah. I don't know if you caught last week, I was telling David Carr and Crystal that a new house went on the market in our neighborhood. And of course, we wanted to look at its pictures. And we were like, they have a rooftop deck? And then realized that the picture was just this little deck that's off the master bedroom on one side of the roof. But they took it with such a wide angle lens that it looks like it spans almost the whole roof, whole like top of the house.
Yeah.
It's not very accurate.
In today's world, we're clickbaited all the time. We're either immune to it or we're completely irritated by it. Either way, it's not really a great reaction. So you're better off just taking a really good shot and getting the angles right and showing a realistic view. I try to position myself to where maybe you're not seeing so many power lines that are coming to the house, or, I've had realtors ask me to Photoshop stuff out, which I can't do. But I tell them, I'll pick the most flattering angles. But yeah, you don't want to mislead people and waste their time.
Yeah. All right. Good. I just wanted, otherwise I knew I was going to forget. Real quick, another piece of video that went out on my channel over the last week was the review of the 28-200. Tonya, let me ask you for a minute. You ever shoot with a super convenient lens like this?
I have a 70-200, but other than that, I don't have a much larger zoom range than that. I prefer to shoot with primes when I can.
Yeah. And why do you like primes?
I don't know, man, when you're shooting a prime, there's just like some quality that you cannot get with any kind of zoom lens. I will say, since using the Z7, I feel like that's bringing new life back to some of the lenses that I didn't care for as much. And I'm switching very slowly to native lenses, but even the 70-200, the last photo shoot I did with that, using the Z7, I was like, man, I'm in love with this lens again. So.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I mean, I agree. As I said, when I shot the portrait session, I almost shot 90% of it on the 85 and then a little bit on my 28 to 75, mostly out at 75-ish. Because it just it has that look. Not only is it the more shallow depth of field, but it primes just kind of have that look. I've never been a big fan of super convenient lenses because you make some sacrifices, but I have to say Tamron did a pretty dang good job with this. If you're looking for a kind of do-it-all travel lens, it's impressive. And $700, $730, plus it starts at f2.8. I successfully shot some astrophotography with it. I had one issue with it. This is a little embarrassing, but you know, this is the kind of show where I just share everything I'm thinking and feeling. I had one issue with it, focus issue, that I knew they were going to fix by firmware. I didn't know that the firmware was already out. So I talk about it in the video, and then like 5 minutes after the video released, one person commented and said, "You might have missed it." That's so nice. That was a nice way to say that. Thank you. You might have missed it, but the firmware update is already out. And yes, it fixes the issue. So again, highly recommend if you're looking for a very travel-friendly lens. I almost put this in the video. I almost always get questions on these videos about these convenient lenses. Wedding photographers and portrait photographers, they say, "Can I use this?" And I always am like, this isn't the best for that. Because if you're getting, if clients are paying you to capture the very best, you shouldn't be sacrificing some quality for your own convenience. Mm-hmm. That's when you go to the primes. That's when you go to the shorter focal range lenses, so that you know you're getting kind of the best that you can.
Well, I rarely take an 85 off of my camera when I'm shooting portraits. I love it.
Yeah, that's a favorite focal length of yours too.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about this in a while on the show, but you know, renting lenses is always a great way to go. If you're planning ahead, you know a client's hiring you, they're paying you money for it. You don't have the lens, but you know what you're going to need. Put that into your budget, into your quote, and then, you know, rent the lens. And that's a great way to go, because you're absolutely right. When clients are paying you for something special, give them something special. And if you have the ability to do that, just build it into the quote. It's not that much more.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I agree. It lets you kind of access some of those lenses that you know, cash outright would be pretty expensive.
Yeah, now get it a little. Don't have it arrive right before your shoot.
Yes.
Get it like the day before. You know, spend a little bit of extra money on an extra day or something, and get familiar with it. But you know, we haven't been traveling much, but you know, I love renting lenses for certain trips if I don't have what I need.
Yeah. And then, as I said, I'm working on this review of the 12 to 24 and the Sigma 14 to 24. This is the updated one for the Sony. I think we'll probably see a lens like this for the Z system soon. You know, yes, Sigma already has a 14 to 24, but that was really for DSLRs. And then they adapted it by just really extending the flange distance, and it was kind of cumbersome. This is now made for mirrorless, and it is a very, very nice lens. And the price, this is, I think, $1,299 versus $2,900. Oh, I'm holding it that poorly. $2,999. So basically, you're paying a lot more money for 2 more millimeters, which that can be fairly significant depending on what you want to shoot. But
the difference is in the diameter of those 2 lenses. The Sony looked enormous.
The Sony is enormous. Both of them except rear filters, which I've kind of not been a big fan of rear filters because they've always been fiddly and difficult. But there are new glass rear filters that are way less fiddly. So you can see there's a spot in here.
Cool. Yeah,
that they fit in, and then this little switch locks over and locks it in place. So I'd like to give those a try. It's a much more affordable way to get an ND filter on a giant bulbous front element lens like this. But yeah. So we'll be talking more about those soon. And then I will, at some point, I have like it seems like everybody else adopted van life as part of my life now. We have this minivan. We've started to camp in it, which so far it's been awesome. So I picked up this guy. This is the RAV Power. It's basically a suitcase of batteries. That's what it is. And it's got on top 2 little outlets so that I can charge drones and cameras on the go. And it's got 4 USB ports on the side. It's got an AC port here. It is, what is its specs actually? It's enough to charge my laptop up a bunch. It regularly costs about $200. They've got a deal on their website that takes it down to off $92. I've got a coupon code that'll take it $94 down. I don't know why they gave me a coupon code with $2 more dollars, but it saves you $2. It's linked in the show notes right down below this video if you're interested. If you are looking for a way to charge your stuff on the go, this is pretty impressive. It does charge up really fast, which is different than many of these that I've used in the past. So I'll be talking about that more in a future van life video. Maybe. So.
You hashtag van life.
I just need that for my 3 kids.
Oh, yeah. Keeping all of their stuff charged. Yeah. What were you saying? Yeah. All right. Okay, let's move on a little bit, but maybe actually before we move on and get into the kind of the Lightroom tips and tricks section where we do some editing and reviewing of your photos, you being pen members, let's talk to Tonya a little bit more. This is your first time on the show. Again, thank you so much for joining us. You are a fantastic portrait photographer, fine art photographer, macro photographer. Hey, tell us a little bit how you got started in photography, and then what has drawn you into each of these areas? And if you only could pick one, what would you, where would you find yourself mostly in a dream world?
Oh, with a Hasselblad.
Sony and I just about that. And by the way, before you get started, Tonya, I haven't forgotten about you. I've got a couple messages from you on deck, and I just haven't had a chance to open up Messenger.
That's
lately.
fair.
So my apologies.
No problem. I wasn't worried about it. What was your first question?
Tell us a little bit about how you got started in photography. How long has this been a thing for you, and what drew you to photography?
Well, I took a photography class when I was 14 in high school, and I'm still really good friends with my photography teacher from high school. And I don't remember it, but he says I came in like so excited about this class. And I worked for him. He owned a print lab, and I started printing in the darkroom as a teenager. And so I've just kind of been in photography since then. I'm a lot older than 14 now. So it's been a while. And I, about 11 or 12 years ago, I started doing photography as a business. I actually started with weddings, which now I loathe, and I don't take weddings or events anymore. But I just love doing portraiture. I even think macro really is portraiture. It's just little.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
So that lends itself to what I do really well. And then fine art, I just really started pursuing about a year ago. And I just wanted a place to explore and play a little bit more, be more creative, because sometimes you just feel dried out doing client work all the time.
Nice. And let's go to your link tree and pull up your macro for a minute. And I want to tease just a little bit later. You have some fantastic macros, but we're going to look at a finalist in a wildlife competition a little bit later with a macro that just kind of blows my mind a little bit. So I'm excited for you to see that and share some opinions as well. Yeah. So if you had to constrain yourself to one area of photography, what would you say would be that area that you'd constrain yourself to?
Oh man. That's hard because I love doing the fine art, but I also like getting paid. So
yeah,
I don't know. That's too hard. Clearly, I haven't been able to choose. So I just have 3 different areas because I market so differently with them. Like my portrait work, I'm really just looking for people that are local that will hire me. So I keep that separate from everything else. And I used to kind of have it all together, but I felt like it probably wasn't appealing when I was trying to market to like the mother of a newborn. And then all of a sudden I posted a spider. It just didn't go over well. So
no, it's really smart.
Yeah, I think that's a good call, and I think that helps people kind of. I imagine it's a good bit more work managing. So you have at least 3 Instagrams. One for your fine art, one for your portraiture, and one for your macro. I imagine that takes some more work, but it does allow you to really kind of focus on what you want your clients to see.
It takes a little bit more work, but actually I felt really relieved when I finally separated them because I felt like I didn't have to do as much planning. I knew what went where. So some of that was easier. I kind of keep everything together on Facebook, but that's just its own animal too. So.
Let me ask you, do you are you booking shoots from Instagram or Facebook? And I'm just kind of getting a sense of photographers today. Is one working better than another for you?
So parents hire me from Facebook, and teenagers book with me for their senior portraits through Instagram.
Okay.
So I have a completely different audience there. Usually they will be like, hey, I really want you to do my senior portraits. And then I ask for their parents. So that's how
that sounds
that's how the dynamic for
I'm
Instagram
hearing.
And Facebook works.
Yeah, nice. And we talked a little bit about gear. You mentioned having the Z7. Tell us a little bit about how your transition has gone, because it's been fairly recent and it's David Carr's fault. So let's put him out there. I know he was in chat earlier, but I think he did have to go because it is actually his son's birthday. We all wish Wyatt his 16th happy birthday.
I know.
So
I should have ordered one of his T-shirts, because then I could have at least represented here.
Oh, yeah. I know. We should all order everybody's T-shirts and then switch them up from time to time.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how that transition to mirrorless has gone. And for someone, I think we're at a point where there's a good mirrorless option for everybody in every camp. And there's no more of that kind of I need to keep waiting, although there are some valid reasons for some people to wait still too. Tell us, why you finally made the jump and how it's been for you.
Well, I kind of knew I was getting ready for another camera, and then I was watching you guys talk about mirrorless, and I did the podcast with David, and he handed me the Z6, and then I kind of came home ruined. So, and then I mean, I don't even know what to say. When I use it, I'm just like, this has something that the DSLR didn't. It just does. With the old lenses, I have the 50 millimeter for the mirrorless, and that is just an incredible lens. I just shot some pictures of my son the other day, and there's just something there that the other one didn't have. I love it.
Yeah. And is that the 50 f1.8?
Yeah.
That's nice. I mean, again, I've said this before on the show. I think Nikon has done a really nice job with their Z bodies, and especially the lenses they first came out. I felt like they were nice matches in size and weight and cost. Whereas on the Canon side, they're a little bit they were mismatched up until more recently, but now with this R5 beast out, I think it's come in line a little bit as well. Yeah. And the transition to an EVF from having an OVF. How was that?
Oh, I love it. I don't know why you wouldn't. When I'm shooting portraiture and I'm watching it happen in the viewfinder, I wouldn't want to go back. I still have my DSLR as a backup, but man, as soon as I can replace that with a mirrorless, I will.
So Tonya, when you first started shooting mirrorless, or the first time you shot mirrorless and you used EVF, did you instantly like it, or did it take some getting used to?
I liked it right away.
Yeah, I did too. It was that the X1D that you had on the Southwest trip. Well, I had played around with your camera a little bit, I guess, but that's the first time I really had a camera in my hand for a while with EVF. And man, once I got used to that, it's just awesome.
Yeah. I feel like I'm a person that really adapts a lot of muscle memory for things. So just finding the controls at first threw me off, but I didn't have any problem with that. I was like, this is fantastic. So
yeah.
Nice. Good. All right. And what's your next lens? You said you've been adapting some lenses and plus using some of your existing lenses from the D810. What's the next Z lens that you have on your list?
Oh man, I go back and forth because I really want the 24-70, which I didn't really love for the DSLR, but I hear such good things about now. I kind of would like to have that range back again. But I have beat my 70-200 essentially into the ground. And so I was kind of thinking maybe I should just do that one next.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're all so cheap, so it's real easy to decide.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to, we'll talk to Tonya more as we go through the show, but let's dive into one of our favorite parts of this show. This is where you being Pen members, have submitted images to us in Lightroom, and we're going to share some tips and tricks for editing them. If you haven't watched this show in a while, just a reminder, we're really trying to speed this segment up. And also, you all have been doing such a fantastic job of getting your images in for review. We've got more than typical. So we really might not all talk about every image, just one of us or two of us, and we're going to spend a shorter amount of time with them. So I'm going to go ahead and share our screen. And first up is Kevin's Capitol Club Pano. I believe this is downtown Sacramento. Is that right? Am I right? Do we know? I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. Steve, I'm going to put you on the spot because as our resident kind of real estate and architecture photographer, always keeping lines straight and things like that. What do you think about this?
Yeah, it's really hard. This was, I'm sure, a pano, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Down there. And you can tell because of the curve. And what I typically will work on with a shot like this is, I mean, if you can get away with showing a little bit less and there you go, altering the angles, then, because see what you're doing right now is looking good in the middle of the lens. It's taking that fisheye away a little bit, but it's applying some crazy distortion on the edges. You look at the far left, bottom left corner, that building is completely painting in. So, I play around in the transform tool. I would first make sure that the horizon is your kind of like your ground zero horizontal line that you're going to line everything up to. And then you may want to do another horizontal, like, for example, that parking lot that's right in the center. Yeah. Draw a horizontal line from one edge to the other and see if it takes that bow away a little bit. It's going to line it up to the horizon.
How actually I'm like if I go from here to corner to corner.
Yep. Okay. Just to start out with, let's see what it does. And then did you lose the horizon line?
Oh, sorry. I did that with the crop tool. So let me put that there.
Yeah. See, that's going to line those two up. And then you can use a vertical line. I'd probably say maybe that gold building to the left of, right there. Draw a vertical line, which it looks pretty straight, actually.
Yeah, that one is pretty close. Maybe over here?
Yeah. I elongated it a little bit. So you still see that bow in the parking lot, though. It's an indicator that, it's a panorama or it's been shot with a fisheye sort of lens. And it's tricky. And this is why I say, just because you shoot a panorama doesn't mean you need to show everything that you get. So it's just getting you some space to play around. And I typically, I'll crop it way in. I mean, it's a huge file as it is, assuming you've stitched together raw. And then, I would just kind of pick a section of it that you want to highlight as your wide, horizontal shot.
I agree. I think you got some great detail in here, though, Kevin. A lot to work with, but I would work through that transform tool a little bit more. Thanks. Yeah. Nice. All right. Oso has sent in. Actually, Oso's got a couple of pictures. Let me find one. Let's do this one from Oso. We'll just do one today. And he's been traveling within Mongolia, which, by the way, as of a couple of days ago, Mongolia was, at least as of a couple of days ago, they haven't had a single recorded death from COVID, which is pretty amazing. Oso told me that. So they've been incredibly careful in shutting down their borders. But he has been traveling within country some, as he's found himself a little bit more free time. And I just love this kind of mix of dunes and water. What do we think about a, it is 16:9 already. How about a 2:1 then? This feels like, and again, I feel like we say this often, you get to a point in the sky where nothing really changes. So why keep showing it? Unless there's exciting stuff happening up there, I don't really feel like there's a strong reason to show as much. So maybe thinking about thirds somewhere in here.
Yeah, I like that a lot better.
Yeah. No. And Steve, we've missed you, but we have managed to make it through this section. What do you think about a black and white here?
That was my first thought when I saw the picture, was going black and white. But you're going to really have to play around with the contrast and probably really lighten up those dunes and darken down the water to create some contrast. So you keep the depth. It definitely works as a color photograph. I mean, maybe I would just mute the colors instead of going full black and white here, because I think you're gonna end up having to do a lot of work to differentiate the two. Yeah, that looks perfect.
Yeah.
And actually in color, I mean, he has nice complementary colors happening in that, but I think even the color version needed a little more contrast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point about, let me reset this because my editing doesn't look so good here. The colors do work complementary as well, but we need more contrast, don't we? Yeah. Nice. And let's just come back real quick and look at.
I think you were absolutely right the way you had cropped it, getting rid of a lot of the sky. Now the story is about having your feet in the dunes, being a participant.
Yeah.
When you show all that sky, it's just a very flat image, and you're just looking at a snapshot, or you're a viewer.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. All right. Thanks, Oso. Jeremy Lavender has the Chugach Mountains. I wonder if this is from, I'm going to assume it's from an airplane. I don't know for sure. Talk about a strong black and white image, though. This is really nice.
I hope if he prints this would look fantastic, like metal or metallic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Which, by the way, Bay Photo has a 25% sale right now on their nice prints, and that includes not metal prints but metallic paper. And it's a great way to get a nice print of something beautiful like this. Only thing catching my eye is we have just a little bit of the kind of tops up here cut off and just this dark valley right here in the corner. Can I get a second opinion on whether or not I'm being too picky on that?
No, I agree.
Yeah, maybe come down if we come down here, we aren't cutting into any of those, just barely cutting into those peaks. And we still have a little bit of a dark corner here that might be worth working and bringing up the brightness some, or just even filling in to make it feel like it's part of a gentle slope. Otherwise, gosh, I think you've done a really nice job here, Jeremy. And it's quiet, so I think everybody agrees. Nice. We're moving on. Diane, what's that?
Creatively thinking about it. That's a beautiful shot, Jeremy. I love the lighting on it and the way the shadows appeared.
Yeah.
I was going to have you try some things, but I know we're trying to watch our time. So
yeah. Let's move on. Diane's. And Diane, this is a great example of some of what we were talking about last week. And David Carr showed the example of the two different eagles. And we had the one that both were beautiful images, but the one where the background had just kind of vanished into darkness, I felt like, we agreed, was a very strong and a stronger image. And that was the first thing that came to mind when I saw this. You've got this stunning kind of side profile of an amazing bird of paradise flower. And if we can isolate it completely by itself and get rid of that kind of busy background, I think you'll have a stunning image on your hand. I would probably do that in Photoshop. I would carefully mask out the flower itself and then just really kind of play with the shadows. If we stayed here in Lightroom, what happens if we just bring the shadows down? Can we? Well, we can start to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Overall.
It's just a little bit, not too much though. You start getting some really weird edges.
Yeah. Sorry, Steve. What did you say before weird edges?
I was saying just darken the blacks a little bit, but it looked like you were starting. Well, taking the shadows down certainly helped with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't mind the background there. Just some of the hotter spots I would tone down, but the texture.
I actually had talked to her about this image in option 1, and I don't mind the background either, just because I think that it complements the shape of the flower. But I know it does look like there was a little bit of cloning right close to the stem that I told her to watch out for and just tidy up, like right in there. Yeah. I'd also just if she can bring down the highlights at the base of I guess they're petals. I don't know. Just the whites get a little bit hot for me, but I actually like the pattern of the background for this.
All right.
Yeah.
I was just thinking back to, I don't remember, Lori Meyer's Bleeding Hearts photo, where it just really stands out. Again, I think I could see what you're both saying, especially with this nice kind of repeating pattern that works back here.
It's like a Game of Thrones flower.
Nice. All right. Thanks, Diane, for sending that in. And now we're moving on to Brian Scanlon's, just called Sonoma.
The upper right corner is bugging me, and I want to get it out of there for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's got that road which has the same color as the hillside, so my eye just is getting off of what's the main subject here. But also, it's a very cool scene back there. It's very blue. The rest of the scene is super warm.
So would you come down?
Yeah, I mean, I would consider coming down a bit. I might consider spending some time. Brian's savvy enough. You could spend a little bit of time, kind of clone stamping and filling some of that in with some trees. I think it would just be really nice because it's something that's grabbing my attention, and it's way up in the corner. It doesn't need to be. And I understand you probably, this is where you have to stand and get the shot. But if you come down too much, I feel like it's taking away too many of the trees at the top. So I would just kind of try to fill that in. I feel it's too tight once you come down past all of that. And I do like some of these trees here kind of standing against that. So I think there's a happy medium there of cloning out that and otherwise. What do you think about a little bit warmer? Yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out, what is it, like wheat on the fields there?
I think this is just, this is
hard for me to see on my screen, but
your West Coast kind of golden grass that just blankets some of the hills, around, I would think a little bit. I'm going to warm that, and I'm going to bring up the shadows just a bit. It really doesn't do much, does it? I don't like that.
I mean, another thing you could do with this, but it would involve cropping the crap out of it. And I don't know if he took this with his medium format, you might be able to get away with it. But leave that corner and just create basically an image out of the upper right corner of this picture. Kind of crop in all the way from the left, past the trees in the middle of the frame from the left. And then come down, use the slight light on the hills as your leading lines from the lower left corner. Keep coming down, keep coming. Yeah, there you go. And I mean, I wouldn't, unless he took this with his, there you go.
We still got a 3000 by 2600 image.
So that's, I mean, it's shareable at least. I don't know
Yeah.
that I'll go to print something massive for your wall, but this is, you know, when you take these big scenes sometimes, and I encourage you to do this when you shoot, look at the scene. Sometimes the overall scene is beautiful, but also look for these little stories within the scene that you can create a beautiful image out of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think I really like this little corner back here. I agree, Steve. As a larger picture, it's kind of pulls you away because it's different. But I think it is an interesting story as well. And John Drummond suggests split toning. And I really never, I shouldn't say never. It's so rare that I can nail a split tone that I'm really happy with. But that might be a good way to get a little bit more interesting color in those shadows here, because I feel like it's just a little, I don't know, looks like old elephant skin, and not in a good way. All right. Sue Stevens has got Just Chillin'. Some little heron type guy sitting down here with this very striking eye. What do we think about these little bits of green poking in on the left and the right? Is it worth coming in?
Yeah, I want to hear what Tonya has to say about this one.
Well, I would at least clone those out if you wanted to keep the space on that side, which maybe needs just a little bit more. I'd also remove the yellow leaves that are kind of coming down in there. They replicate the color of the beak, so it becomes really distracting for me.
I agree.
Yeah. What happens? Can we throw a radial filter over that real quick, and just lower the saturation, invert, just to take that and mellow them out, just real quick to kind of showcase what you're talking about. But I think that's a great point. They're catching the light, and they have that such similar color as well. Yeah. Nice.
And I also don't know, I mean, if the highlights can come down on the rock, your eye's always drawn to the brightest part of the image. So right now, that's kind of the rock. We can tone that down. I think that will help.
Yeah, toning that down. You can even go with the brush tool and kind of brighten up the bird around the eye. Good point.
So brush on.
And I don't see a catch light, and I always think that adds a lot. So if a catch light could be added, that'll really help the eye to stand out, since there are some other elements kind of competing there. Yeah.
Let's get the brush. New effect. Now, you'd probably do that in Photoshop, right, Tonya?
I'm always amazed watching you guys do this, because I do so little in Lightroom. I do almost everything in Photoshop, but you.
I don't.
If I used Lightroom as proficiently as you did, I would probably do more in Lightroom. But
yeah, I and I've been thinking about this too. I don't want people to get the opinion that I poo-poo Photoshop, because whenever Steve says that would be best in Photoshop, and then I do the little Q tool in Lightroom and it works, I have to say, I wiped my iMac this weekend. I totally wiped it, cleaned it, reformatted it, mostly because Lightroom was feeling pretty slow, but there was some other cruft and stuff happening as well. And it was during some spot removal in Lightroom, and I was like, Photoshop, it does take like 30 seconds to open an image in Photoshop, and of course then to come back to Lightroom. But the spot removal stuff not only works so much better, there's absolutely no lag to it ever when you're working in Photoshop. So it is worth taking the time to move over there, except when we're doing this show. And yeah, I'm failing at it. I can't get it to add. Oh, I could do color right here, couldn't I? What happens if I do like white here all the way up? Can I make it happen? No. So you need Photoshop. Okay. Nice. Thank you, Sue. Paul Anderson's got another bird for us. Not a swan. Thank you, Paul. And I wonder, yes, this is with Paul's new Sony 600mm lens. This is these burrowing owls that are all across the Southwest and some even in the Southeast. God, I love these guys. They're so cool.
Let me zoom in on that bird on its face. I just want to see. Oh, that's nice.
I know. I'm so jealous. An owl is completely on my bucket list of things to photograph. So
they are such cool creatures. ISO 2000. So when we zoom in, we definitely see a little bit of that noise. Paul, if you haven't run it through denoise, you might want to. One thing, what do you, the bright lights in the background, they're interesting, but it's awfully bright over here, and my eye is getting drawn away. Is that happening to anybody else or just me?
Yeah, and I'm conflicted because they're so glamorous, but they really are. I feel like the owl could be brighter. So I don't know. There needs to be some sort of balance there, because as much as I do love them and it's such fantastic bokeh, I'd love to see the bird brighter. So
yeah, I'm just brushing on a little bit of increased exposure. And now I'm going to bring up, oh, that was exposure and shadow. So I'll bring up both of those. You do have to really be careful because that noise is going to show up more. But I do think there is room for brightening.
Hey, Toby, you with me for just a second, because I wish I had this on my desktop to play around with it. Take the crop. I just want to show the, come up from the bottom, crop out the green. So you're going to obviously.
Am I cropping out the feet?
Yeah, so I just want to show the yellow-orange in the background with the bird sort of looking into the lower left corner.
So bring this in a little bit here.
Yeah, not too much, but then come up and down from the bottom and top. So you're just showing
really tight.
Yeah, kind of fill in the frame with that.
oh.
I tend to go towards simplicity. I would still play around with this crop. I'm not crazy about that ratio, but I think it looks totally cool with that. I don't know. It's glamorous was a perfect word to describe that, Tonya. That background. It's just really cool.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I think you might have a couple of options out of this, especially since it's so sharp.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I do. I have a tough time giving up his cute little furry, feathery legs, but that was an interesting look as well. Nice, Paul.
And I'm a big fan of Paul's work. Man, he's a reason to stay on Facebook.
Nice. All right, we got Kelly Mitchell up in the prairies of Canada with this shot, and this is nice. This is kind of those like nice little farm scene. It's hard, you know, there's no horizon. So then my eye wants to use that darker kind of hedge or brush line to tweak the straightening a little bit. And I don't know if that matters much. I also wonder if we come down a little bit, similar to Oso sky picture, where at a certain point, this field really remains very static. And we might not need as much of it. We might be able to bring these little guys, these little grain silos right up to the top. And I think, not to crop out your watermark, Kelly, but what if we come in just a little bit here for a little bit of a wire, somewhere around here. Just trying to get a feel for the spacing as this first field ends. What do you think?
I personally would take the lower light stuff out. I'd start it off in the green section.
Really? All the way.
And leave it, you know, at the top, enough, you know, space at the top. Because what you have is this like horizontal green band that just runs right across the middle of it. And the foreground, not only, I mean, it was kind of interesting, but you had tractor marks going through it and you had some really bright spots and stuff where I feel like this kind of splits it into just a more simplistic scene of you don't know where that green starts or ends. Well, you see where it ends, but you don't know where it starts. I mean, you could be standing on green right there. I just kind of felt like you didn't need that foreground.
Okay, nice. And I'm curious, I thought you might suggest black and white. It's got some nice colors in it, but I think black and white also can have that timeless feel here.
I think black and white's a great call, but I would still do the same crop that I was talking about because you got the same issue. There's the dark band running across the center of the screen.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I like color because you have these, you know, these are silver, but picking up the blue of the sky are a nice contrast against those warm wheat tones. Cool. All right. And Sean, Gateway to the West. Sean's been working on this one in the pen group for a while. There's, I think, some wires that were in the sky that he was asking for some suggestions on removing, and I detect no wires in the sky now. So this looks good, Sean.
I know. I worked with him a little bit on this one, and so when you sent this to me in the show notes, I zoomed way in on this to see, and he did a fantastic job because it is hard to clone in a gradient.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Good point. Good point. And there is a nice gradation to that sky from that deep blue. And I think maybe is that, no, we even got a little bit of star peeking up there in the corner, which is kind of neat. And one under the arch as well.
Toby, can you zoom in on the top of that green building? I want to see where it meets the sky. Oh, that's clean. That looks good.
Yeah, on mine, I'm seeing just a tiny hint of a little, yeah, it looks a little like you worked on darkening the building a bit, Sean, and some of that bled over. So I would be real careful about that. I see that over above the U.S. Bank as well, I think. But
yeah,
that's
why I wanted to zoom in. I could, from afar, it kind of looked like some hazing was taking place, but yeah. I couldn't really tell.
Yeah. And when I look really closely, and I don't think this is coming over in YouTube for anybody, there are 3 little marks here that look just a little suspicious that I think was part of the editing process. But that's really all I'm seeing that points to some editing. Otherwise, I think you have a really strong image here, really nice exposure, balanced nicely from the bright light on the arch itself, still have that detail. And in the darker areas as well.
Yeah, great image, Sean. Well done.
Yeah, nice. And Carrie Dahlstrom has been on a pretty cool road trip and submitted this one of a moose in the Tetons.
This is awesome.
It's really nice. It's just kind of a classic good shot.
Yeah, I think for me, again, with the cropping, I feel like that's kind of my thing tonight, I guess. I would do a freeform crop. I would come in from the left into that flatter section of the mountain range in the background, right about there. And then I would come up from the bottom, but be careful not to cut off any of the reflection. And then I'd come in from the right. What you want to do is try and get rid of that little piece of land that's over on that right corner. So you kind of need to probably clone that out in Photoshop, but yeah, I want it wider. That puts the moose kind of looking in the direction of the end of the frame, and it's a little too close. So I would that'd be super easy for Photoshop to just put water right there.
Yeah,
and I think that, and then I would really work on some contrast and make it a little crunchier in the mountains. I want to see it looks a little washed out to me, and the sky looks very washed out. I want to see things just kind of, have some contrast and edginess to them and some vibrancy.
Let's highlight down a little bit. Get a little more color in there as well. I think you can, I don't know what time of day this was shot, but we can definitely, the light feels fairly soft. So I think there's plenty of room to work with in making it even softer and still have a very,
use a dehazing, Toby. That's a little red on the mountains.
Yeah. Now, I'll just point out, careful. I by dehazing and some of the other edits I've done, I've definitely brought some noise out in the sky. So better would be to kind of brush selectively on the mountains what you want, and then a separate edit that's going to kind of bring down the colors in the sky a little bit and keep them nice and soft as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anytime I'm doing a shot like this where I have an edit up above and there's a reflection, I'll usually try to just duplicate my edit and then bring it down and throw it on the reflection as well, so that you have a similar edit and a similar feel. Be careful not to ever make your reflections look perfect mirror-like of what is above, because that's very, very rare that it's at that level of the sameness. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, great shot.
All right. Thank you, everybody who submitted images. And of course, thank you, Tonya and Steve, for your input. Really appreciate it. If you would love to see us give you feedback on images in the future, you should join Pen. If you're a Pen member and you're not submitting images, it is, I think, one of the best things that you can do to grow as a photographer besides just going out and shooting. It's like the second best thing you can do is to get feedback on your work. All right, let's move on a little bit and let's talk. Steve, you've moved on from the Canon world, but you have been a Canon photographer for many years. You still do own the 5D Mark IV. We talked a little bit about the R5 and the R6, but now there's this rumor of what we're calling the R5, or what Canon rumors, I didn't make that up. Canon rumors is calling the R5s. Very likely a 90 megapixel camera sharing a similar body. How interesting is this to you?
This is super interesting to me because this essentially, I'm not into these like 100 megapixel sort of things. For me, there comes a point where you're trying to cram so many megapixels onto a sensor that's such a size that your low light ability is diminishing. And so, okay, fine, 90 megapixels, that's an impressive number to a lot of people. I don't really care about that. But if they came out with an S version, which essentially would be like, remember the 5D Mark IV came out shortly after they had the 5DS and the SR.
Mm-hmm.
The S and the SR were photography-heavy cameras. They didn't have any impressive stats when it came to video, but they were awesome, just straight photography cameras. And they charged for it. But if they come out with this R5S, that's kind of like the R5 that's coming out, but without, or came out, but without all that video stuff that you're, like me, I'd be paying for features that I don't really care about using. But if they make it more of a photography, heavy camera rather than a videographer camera, I'd be very interested in that. I have not read the press release or the rumors about it. I guess it's not press release, is it? Is it?
No, just rumors so far. Very little information. 90 megapixels and a higher resolution EVF, which I have to say the R5 EVF is already pretty nice. It's one of the better ones on the market, only beaten a little bit by the Sony A7S III.
Yeah, I'm guessing just by the term S, that, and I don't know what that means in Canon's world, but in history, the 5DS was, basically a photographer's camera.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of the opposite of what Sony does, right? They attach S and it's more of a video.
Yeah, since they love to say that the A7S series is for photography as well because it's sensitivity, but it is more popular with videographers.
Yeah. So if that's the direction that Canon's going to go, I think it'd be a smart move. From a PR perspective, it might be something that they're rushing to try and do just to avoid, because of all the negative stuff that's been said about the overheating and stuff like that with the R5, and from people like me who say, okay, well, that's fine, it shoots 8K. I don't really care about that, and I certainly don't want to pay money for a camera that shoots 8K when I don't care about it. So if you can come up with an S that isn't so video focused, and also you don't have those issues that everybody's talking about, then that'd be awesome. But it's Canon, so, who knows?
Yeah. I'd say, we've touched on this almost every show since the R5 and R6 have been out. They're really struggling to meet the demand. We've got people who have put pre-orders in on the day it was announced with no word on shipping at all yet. So, those folks who have gotten theirs in hand, you are lucky. And there's some discussion whether or not it is part of this whole overheating issue. They did recently update some firmware for both models that help a little bit. It's because, I don't know, Steve, if you've been following, we talked a little bit more about this one of the weeks you weren't here, that it seems more like this isn't hardware. Well, it is hardware, but it's an artificial limitation to protect their cinema line. We also have rumors, or actually I think they have officially said that they have a new cinema line camera coming out soon, which will have probably many of these features and less of the overheating. So it'll be really interesting to see how Canon handles this over the next couple of months, if they really do start meeting demand, if they make any public announcements about the overheating. And of course, as you said, they want to get some news out there of like, hey, maybe photographers aren't that excited about these two cameras, but we've got more stuff coming on the horizon.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm still a huge, I mean, I do. I still have my 5D Mark IV. I still have my Mark III that I kept as a backup. I tend to just shoot the medium format now for all my real estate stuff, which is really what I've been shooting lately. So I haven't been using it. But when we do tours and we're shooting wildlife and, you know, I need a long lens and stuff like that, the Canon's always in my bag. I'm still a huge fan.
Yeah. And I think I've said this before too, though, you know, when, especially last year when we were in Alaska together photographing puffins, which, you know, as far as capturing birds in flight, they are some of the more difficult. Certainly. They just, you know, 18 inches off the water, come screaming out of nowhere in a bayou. And, you know, I had the Sony A7R. Was I testing the R4 at that time? No, just the A7R3, which I feel like is several models, or no, a generation ahead of where the 5D Mark III and 5D Mark IV are, but you were nailing shots. So I mean, you know, the difference in the real world between so many of these cameras is just so slight.
Yeah.
Tonya, megapixel wise, you had a choice when you upgraded to mirrorless or moved to mirrorless between the Z6 and the Z7. How hard was it to choose between 24 megapixels and what is the Z7, 45, 46?
I think 45 or 46. I don't know.
Somewhere around there.
Clearly, this was really important to me, but it was. So I got a refurbished Z7, which it's kind of early in the game, I think, maybe to be able to get those. But it was essentially the same price as the Z6, so I felt like that was kind of a no-brainer. And I've purchased refurbished gear before, and I've always been super happy with it. Yeah. So,
nice.
I mean, that was a consideration for me, but it wouldn't have kept me from waiting on the Z6 either.
Yeah. Can I ask where do you buy your refurbished gear?
I order almost all my gear through B&H.
Nice.
So, and I use your link.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Anybody watching who wants to use my link, it's right down below this show, and it does help out what we do here.
Yeah.
All right. Sony has a new camera that is rumored to be around the corner. It is they're saying a new concept. And so this is more than a rumor because Sony has in fact announced that they are having a press event next Tuesday, September 15th. Here's what we know. They're calling it the A7C. It is going to be a smaller full frame body. Very similar to their kind of mirrorless line. It will still have a viewfinder. There was some discussion about that or not. I tell you, as soon as you take a viewfinder away from a camera, it becomes way less interesting to me. I recognize that can save some space and lightweightness, but it really, in my opinion, limits the usefulness in certain situations. Because one, in bright light, it's hard to see without a viewfinder. So I'm glad that's in there. It's going to have the fully articulated screen, not the flippy, but the flip out like we saw on the ZV-1, which is sitting over here somewhere still on the desk. I'm supposed to send this back. So it's going to have the flip out articulating screen. It's going to have the focus power of the A7S III, which is impressive. And it's going to come in at $2,000. So, I mean, you know, in some parts of the show note, I put budget full frame. Yeah, I guess that's budget full frame. But when you look over at rumors of Nikon coming out soon with a budget full frame, Canon with their RP, which is at $1,000, and what else? I mean, you have several good choices under $2,000, and for them to put this new camera at that, I don't know. A single card slot as well, which I feel like we need to make a big deal about at that $2,000 price point. We made a big deal about it in the Nikons, we being most YouTubers. So we'll see. I'll be interested to see how they position this and what happens to the A7 III line, you know, to really differentiate that. A lot of people are waiting for the A7 IV. I don't know.
That's something you just don't hear too much about with Sony, are just the A7 III, and you always hear about the R and the S, but is that because, you know, I'm sort of running around in your circle?
Yeah.
I mean, You've been using an R for forever, but I totally forgot that Sony has the A7. Is it the 3? Is that the most?
A7 III is their entry level full frame, and I'd say on our trips that's probably the one it's hard to tell. You don't know until you like look around on the little corner because they're all identical. Yeah. For the most part until they've made some of the transitions to Model 4. But they are, for the money, I think one of the best full frame cameras you can get when you pair it with all of the different lenses they have. And so to see how they're going to differentiate this will be interesting. Yeah,
I remember it was a big deal when that came out, and we had quite a few clients pick them up, and then it just kind of went quiet. I hadn't heard much about it. I haven't been in a lot of discussions about it either. So.
And it points, people get into discussions about it, but it is still an incredibly competitive camera, even though it's been out 3-ish years now. That's quite some time.
And what's the price point on the A7 III?
It sits at just under 2,000.
Okay.
Which I think is also interesting. You look at what the Z6 and the Z7 were priced when they were released and the price they are now. I did think they were a little high on release, and I think they've come. I think their values are very good now. But the A7 III, that has not changed in price basically since it was released. It is about the same price, holding steady for this period of time is pretty impressive. So we'll see.
Yeah.
The other mention that they're gonna is that there'll be some compact lenses that are going to be announced along with this camera to really kind of be more travel friendly. We'll see. We'll see how that all works out. And then I teased this in a couple of different places in the show notes, but not too much, is where are the new Panasonic Micro Four Thirds? I don't think we need to get into bigger detail about them, but it's interesting that they have launched full frame now, but they have been very quiet on the Micro Four Thirds front. And of course, Olympus was sold off in a sad way. We have new gear from Olympus, but just lenses. And I wonder how often we'll see new bodies. I don't think too often.
Very sad.
Yeah. One other thing, it's on the show notes, or it should be, is a teardown of the R5. Lens Rentals, Roger does fantastic teardowns of both lenses and camera, and they recently took apart an R5 and says that it is incredibly weather sealed. I'm paraphrasing. It's like multi-page, multi-paragraph. But it is impressive the amount of weather sealing that they saw on that camera. And of course, that's part of the reason why it has some overheating issues. It's not just timers on the chip, but it is pretty sealed up. There's no place for the heat to go.
Well, I'm glad that Canon hasn't lost their touch there, because I put my 5Ds through, you name it. They've gone through it, and they always just, there's been times where they've been completely fogged up or iced over or whatever, and you give them an hour and they warm up and the condensation goes away from the inside and they work perfectly fine.
Yeah. I have had one issue with the 5D Mark III, and Roger actually mentioned that he felt the weakest access point for water with the EOS R5 was the lens mount area. And I believe that's where my issue arose on the 5D Mark III. I had a third-party lens on it that wasn't sealed as well. I think water came in that way, and I did have a repair bill because of that. But in general, they are very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Okay, I wanted to pull up. I mentioned this macro that kind of blew my mind. Let's see. Did I just lose where I'm going? Yeah. It is part of DP Review has this. I saw this floating around in a couple of different places, though. This is the Nature Finalist Slideshow. That's a really descriptive name, isn't it? It is Nature in Focus Festival Awards. And there's some really good images in here, but it is, and so I'd invite you all to go see, but it's this one that I just kind of love, mostly because it's using a technique I've never even considered. And that is that the photographer changed the focus during the exposure. Have either of you ever played with that?
I have with, like if you take a cityscape, or you can do it with fireworks too, but you take a cityscape with all the lights.
Yeah.
As it's exposing, especially with the telephoto lens, you kind of zoom in or zoom out. You get all these like crazy lights coming towards you.
I've zoomed. I've never changed focus though.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess it is the same idea. Why didn't I just think, one or the other? I don't know. I just thought this was cool. You're down, you're in this frog's world, and then there's this epic lightning storm going on up above. Yeah. There are some really cool images in here. You should take some time to look through, like this one of an octopus, or actually it's a nautilus that hugs a jellyfish, and they ride around the seas together and they're best buds. And then, you think about where do cartoonists come up with these wacky aliens from sometimes? Well, you don't have to look far. This is some beetle insect. Look at that thing. That looks completely made up. I can't believe that's real.
It's like a Sith Lord or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got the colors, doesn't it? So, and then I thought this was very cool too. Very simplistic, but with a longer exposure of some birds flying, and then just tucked down at the bottom, all the birds that are just kind of waiting to fly. So
I like that a lot.
Yeah,
I do too. That's really cool.
Yeah, simple, very simple. Okay, one thing I wanted to mention a little bit. So last week we talked a bit, and David Carr nicely kind of edited a couple of photos to give us an idea of what takes a photo from snapshot to epic. And I was thinking about it after the show, and I thought, if there's something concrete to hand people, if there was, I think it would be PPA's 12 Elements of a Merit Image, which is just a really kind of nice way to codify what makes an image stand out from other images. And Tonya, you are, well, Steve, you both are PPA members. Tonya, as you said, you're teaching a class a little bit later this fall. You can find links to that right down below. What are your thoughts about this? And, what are your thoughts? Let me throw it over to you.
Well, I know Steve's already been through this process, and I'm just gearing up for it. So because Districts was canceled, I paid to have 4 of my images critiqued by the PPA because they offered that to members. And that was, well, if you watched option 2 last month, it was a lot like that. Like Jeff is like the real deal. Like everything that I got back from them was very much like the way he told it to me. So it was really good and eye-opening, and I don't get offended about my work. If there's something wrong, like I want to know and I want to fix it. So I found it to be really valuable. I also need to watch things more than once. Like they came back as video critiques, and I had to watch them once and then watch them again without any emotion. Like, because even if you don't get offended, your emotions are still there, like waiting to hear what's going to be said. So I need to get the first one out of the way and then watch it again and take notes. So, but I have 2 that I will not submit to competition after they reviewed it. I feel confident that I did poorly.
But,
But it'll be interesting.
Yeah. And I think it's as you said, these are in a way your babies. You put so much time and effort into them, whether you're doing the type of photography you are, or Steve, or myself, and then to put them in front of somebody and get the kind of that high level feedback, which at times can seem harsh, is just good for growth. And I don't know, when I put this out in front of people, I don't mean to stifle people, from, about to capture an image. I was looking at some pictures when we took the van a couple weekends ago. We went up midday. We were up at the top of this peak. The views were epic. The light was crappy. It was a cloudless sky and very blue and harsh. And I took a bunch of pictures up there. I took some panoramas, and I looked at them all later, and I was like, I'm not sure why I bothered taking these pictures. I definitely am not going to do anything with them. They are, even making them black and white, they just have kind of a flat feel to them, nothing much going on. So I thought I really should have something like this in my mind a little bit more often. It's going to save me work down the road. But at the same time, I know, enough now to keep in my head, I'm starting to sound silly, but to keep this idea of like not wasting my time later. And I don't want folks who are beginners to not snap away, because I think there is a lot of room for you to grow and have these kind of learning experiences where you look back at your own pictures.
I totally agree. I think what I love about the PPA guidelines is that now I'm all for people finding their artistic voice and breaking the rules and doing things that are, you know, sort of out of the box way of editing and stuff like that. I think that's awesome, but you got to know what you're doing. You know, just to go in there and wing it and not have a foundation of what makes a merit image or what makes a good quality image, then you don't even know what rules you're breaking, and you're going to become a much better photographer, artist, when you know what the foundation is and how to produce those types of images, and then where you go from there. If you're just kind of winging it and you can't replicate it, you're not finding your own artistic style or voice. You're just kind of winging it. And so with every image I do, I think about sort of the 12 merits in terms of what a proper photo should be out of what I've captured, but then I'll put my own sort of spin on it based on that foundation. And I think it's a good foundation for everybody to at least be familiar with and work on. You know, I know a lot of people that just kind of poo-poo certain types of photography or ways of editing, and then Toby, you and I see it on almost every tour. There's somebody that's like, Photoshop is fake photography. I'm a purist. I don't believe in editing my images. Well, you know, why are you closing the door so fast? I think you're going to find that there's so many amazing avenues to go with your photography artistic style if you have an understanding of the 12 elements.
It's part of the process. There's
also, the PPA has a really good article as well called the 28 competition sins. I think that's what it is. And that, I feel like sometimes the 12 merits they feel vague. But if you go through those, that's almost like a checklist. Like, you can just know right away, like, what is not going to work for them. And some of them are just good reminders. Like, what's the focal point of this? And do I have something that's getting people, am I controlling the viewer's eye to get them to the focal point? So,
yeah, that's good.
Did you 28 competition sins?
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Yes, I found it. Okay, I'll put a link to this right down below in the show notes. Yes, that's great. Nice. Good. All right. I think that's all of the major topics that I wanted to talk about. We have a couple of Q&A questions that we're going to hit real quick as we start to wrap this show up. Mary wants to know from you, Steve, are agents asking for 360 photos of houses on the market?
No. I mean, if what you mean is like the Matterport sort of thing, like virtual tours, that definitely comes up. But 360 snapshot where you just kind of mouse around, agents haven't been asking me for that. That wasn't really a thing when I was shooting in Southern California and Chicago. So I may not be the best person to ask. Somebody like Travis, Toby, you know, Travis, Flyboy Media down in North Carolina. I mean, he's shooting 10 homes a day. Yeah. But I know I've been out and I've worked with him before, and he's not shooting 360. He's got a Matterport, so he does virtual tours and the dollhouse scene and stuff like that, but not the 360. I personally can't stand the 360s because it's so distorted. Everything is so distorted. And as somebody that wants to create, you know, a good straight architectural image, it's just like, oh my gosh, can't get away from it fast enough. And I can't stand them on Facebook. When you've got to scroll around through a photo, that's my own personal opinion, but it kind of drives me crazy.
Yeah. Hey, TC Films wants to know, are you using a drone in your real estate photography?
That's a great question. I have a drone. Still on this, like, the longest process possible to get my 107 certification for a commercial drone pilot. I kind of just backburnered it for a while because I started getting so many calls to just go out and shoot stills. Yeah. We've got a media company here in town that I can refer to that does drone and virtual tours and all that stuff. And they're really good at it. They're great guys. I love giving them business. I like still images, and so we work together really well. And anyway, I am still going through the process of this. So I have a drone. People do like them. I think it's a great value added service that I can add to my business. But my business to date has been, just really high quality still images.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Good to know. Kevin wants to know, are you shooting any people's rental properties? Rental properties or just for?
I love shooting rental properties. A lot less here than I did in Los Angeles and Chicago, as you can imagine. Those places, typically you find rental properties in coastal settings or big cities, places where people are going to travel to.
Mm-hmm.
The outskirts of Cincinnati, Ohio isn't really a huge destination for people. But I love shooting rental properties because what's the only thing that sells an Airbnb? It's the pictures. I mean, by the time people visit your Airbnb, they've already checked in, they've already decided to spend their money there. So your pictures need to be great, first of all. And if you own a rental property, the last thing you should do is skimp on your pictures. You get your return on investment so fast. Let's say you spend $500 on good pictures. You rent that place out, you get your $500 back in a weekend, and then you rent it again, and you rent it again, you rent it again because of the pictures. I mean, your return on investment is immediate. So anybody that has a rental property and they go cheap on images, huge shame on you. Shame on you to do that with your largest asset of a property anyway, if you're selling it, but especially with a rental property that's just going to see, turnover after turnover. It's the images that sell it. So
nice. Delana, when is Tonya's PPA class? She wants to know.
Oh, that is September 19th for me. And right now I actually contacted them to see if they're going to do an option for virtual, because I thought with COVID, that would probably be a great idea. But right now I'm just doing it locally. So I'm in Pennsylvania. I don't know where you are, but
down in Texas.
I would love.
Yeah, Texas.
Yeah, it'd be a little hike.
Yeah, might be worth it. And again, anybody watching, links to all of Tonya's social media and her little link tree, which has all of that, including the PPA class, is linked right down below this video. Pamela wants us to explain what split toning is. Tonya, do you use split toning in editing?
Very infrequently. When I do, I use Lightroom for it, actually.
Yeah.
But I posted a picture the other day on Instagram that we were talking about, and I talked about some failures. I almost didn't post it because I actually don't really like the color harmony in it. And I played around a little bit with split toning to see if I could fix that, and I still didn't like it. But I just worked for that.
Yeah. Steve, in real estate editing, do you do any split toning work?
Split toning work in real estate editing?
Yeah. No. I guess the simplest way to explain it, Pam, is that it is the ability for you to control the tones in the highlights and the shadows separately. Mm-hmm. And as Tonya mentioned, it's a nice way to kind of bring in some harmony and color balance, because you can say, all right, these shadows are very blue. It'd be much better if they were tending towards teal or something like that. And the brighter areas, let's tend towards orange, for instance. That's what it is. I use it very infrequently too. That's not to say that it isn't valuable, but I just don't find it works that well. I may there's a panel called split toning in Lightroom. I may do split toning more by just using masks affecting the luminosity range. But that's not called split toning per se.
Yeah, with real estate, I do a lot of adjustments to individual color, because rooms will fill with all different types of color. And so usually what I'm doing is I'm toning down the yellows. I'm really toning down the blues, things warm but not too yellow. And then I kind of just get my settings, and then I use that throughout the entire property. You start getting into split toning and stuff, it's like image by image. And I need my images to look consistent, so the viewer has a, okay, they start at the front door and they're seeing the same type of lighting throughout the rest of the house. So yeah, I do a lot of individual color correction, tons of that, but no split toning.
Okay. John has got two questions. First, real quick, opinions on the Canon F11 lenses. We have these new 500 and 600. Is that right? Or is it a 600 and an 800? The F11 lenses, they are fixed at F11 aperture, which I think when they were first announced, all of us were kind of like, really? But it allows them to be incredibly affordable, incredibly lightweight. I haven't shot with them yet, but as John points out, many reviewers seem to be pretty happy with them. I think that for the money, they are very good values, but you do have to recognize that there are some constraints in some lighting situations, like dimmer situations. They're not going to be as great, but these mirrorless cameras, again, Tonya, ask you, and then Steve, I'll ask you, with, these cameras, what's a higher ISO that you're still comfortable shooting at?
Well, that depends for me, because I really don't like to shoot very high ISOs with portraiture, which is what I'm doing most of the time.
Yeah.
So I feel like when I did shoot weddings, I would push that a lot farther, but I still felt like I always regretted it. Of course, my camera gear wasn't the same then. Like that was 10 years ago. So,
yeah.
But I don't know. I try to be real careful. If I can keep a real low ISO and portraiture, I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Steve?
Well, if I'm using a 600 or an 800 lens, the only reason I would want an aperture that small is if I'm on a tripod and I'm shooting, the moon or stars or something like that. Most of the time when I'm using a long lens like that, I want as much light as possible because I'm using it for wildlife. And especially if you're shooting in the morning time or dusk, and nice light and everything, it drives. That's why I don't use extenders, because I've got a 4.5 to 5.6 400, and I put the extender on there, and it's f8 at its shortest setting, and then it kicks up, I think, to f11 with an extender on, depending on what extender I use, and it drives me absolutely crazy because then I got to crank my ISO way up to get the shutter speed that I need. So usually I use those long lenses for a very fast shutter speed, and then therefore I need as much light as possible coming in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, we're making this transition to newer sensors that are capable of going to very high ISOs that can handle better. And so the F11 isn't as bad a constraint as it's been. We're thinking about Mike Tedesco in the Creative Lounge. We had on a fantastic sports photographer. We talked to him a couple of months ago. He is shooting 12,800 and delivering those images to clients happily. And JPEG too. So he's not even doing massive, noise reduction on them after the fact. They are JPEGs, and he's happy with that. So I think that, again, keeping in mind that there are going to be some constraints with time of day and how well that's going to work in lower light situations, that for the money, these are some nice zoom lenses. Last question, also from John and Tonya. I think this is best for you. Best focal length for macro and why? What focal length do you like for your macro work?
So I shoot with a Sigma 150 for macro, and I don't know if that's the best focal length, but that's my lens, and I love it, and I'm so comfortable with it, and I know what I'm going to get from it every time. So all of those are shot with my Sigma 150.
Actually, because you're not disturbing what you're shooting. You can step back a ways. And you get that beautiful bokeh that's appearing in those shots. Those are just awesome.
Yeah, that's the big difference. So
I've always been pretty happy with it.
Yeah. The longer your macro, well, I should say this, all of your macro, if it's a true macro lens, are capable of the same level of magnification, but the longer the focal length, the further back. And Steve, you hit it on the head there with, you got all of these some of these insects can be fairly shy, and you with 150 millimeter don't need to be in their face.
Yeah.
Cool.
Plus, I don't like spiders, so I don't want to get that close to a spider.
Don't come to Seattle right now. We're in the middle of spider season. I swear. Every room over in our house has at least two, and they are just everywhere.
Anytime soon then.
So I'm fine with
We
them.
name them in my house.
We should start naming them, but I'm fine unless they're descending from the ceiling as I'm like relaxing on the couch. Then I'm like, okay, time to get you outside, bud. And then honestly, sometimes I just have Chris do it, because if they're coming down fast, I need to get out of the way, you know. All right. Hey, Tonya, thank you so much for joining us. This is the end of the show.
Yeah.
You made it. You survived. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. This was a pleasure.
Yeah. And of course, as I said, Tonya's information is linked all down below, and you can follow. The easiest one, we said, that you kind of showcase bits and pieces of you and your fine artwork, is at TonyaWilhelm.artist. And I'm sure we'll have you back on at some point. It's nice to have a little, different opinions besides just me, Steve, and David Carr from time to time.
No, I love this. Tonya, I hope you're on again. This was, I know we've kind of talked about this for a while now, and it's just been great to have you on here. And you're super inspirational to the audience and the pen members. And thank you for all the help that you give them.
Yeah, appreciate it. And Steve, thanks for joining us again. We've missed you, bud.
Yeah, I've missed you guys. Thanks for having me back.
You can follow Steve at Scurich on Instagram, and of course his Facebook page is there as well. And I'm not going to link to your Twitter. You know, I tweeted out today that this show, and I just realized your last 2 tweets are just you old man complaining about bad customer service. Get some more tweets on there, Steve.
No, that's my wife.
That's right.
2013. The only time that account gets used is she goes on there and hashtags and complains about something because she doesn't works her account, and she knows that companies will pay attention to that.
Yeah.
So I never even look at it. Same with my LinkedIn account. I never look at it. Well, and then these days I've been off Facebook, but yeah, I've got my professional page up there. And so I certainly appreciate the follows and stuff. Just don't get your hopes up that I'm going to be like super active.
It's all right. It's Twitter. All right. And everybody in the chat room, thank you so much for joining us live. We really appreciate it. You do make this show 10 times better if we can quantify that. And if you're watching this and you're not a pen member, you should seriously consider joining. We are running a special this year for new members. Your first year is $24. You get access to professional photographers, all of this content, new content added each week. And as I said, a fantastic community of people as well. So consider that. And that's at photorec.tv/pen. Until next time, everybody. Bye-bye.